Hi, my name is Meng and welcome to my SwiftUI course. This is the app that we're going to learn how to build. We're going to start with some very basic UI with scrolling and these horizontal cards with very rich content, and then we're going to move on to custom transitions like this one where you're going to use gestures to play with these cards and it feels very organic and delightful to your users. And you're going to learn how to do blur, you're going to learn how to do overlay effects, transformations, rotations, scaling effects, so that you can create something very unique to your design. All animations in SwiftUI are fully interruptible, meaning that you can create these transitions that are not intrusive to your users. We're also using the modal transition like this and the scroll so that we can have a very custom interface, but that still works. And still in line with Apple's controls, so that we can use the drag to dismiss it. We're also using stacks for dynamic layout so that it works across all the devices for iOS. And then we're using dynamic type so that it works with different font sizes. I also set up everything for dark mode. By going to settings, now you can set in iOS 13 to dark mode. And when you switch back to your app, everything is using the styles and the colors for dark mode. We're also going to learn how to create a list using data. It's using a common interface that's very easy to customize. It's passing data to the screen and we have these transitions for free. So I can drag from the border just like that. We're also going to learn how to manipulate data. So we can add records and then we can delete it like this. We can go to the edit mode, reorder the records, and be done with it. Then I'm gonna cover controls like for settings. So we can have these toggles, on, off, a picker, and a form, then save and get the information. So this is a new code editor and preview in SwiftUI. You can see the changes in real time and you can even play with the app as you code along. So for example, if I want to have less blur, let's say 3 instead of 30, you can see the changes happening right away. I can even add new animations quite easily by doing Command Shift and L and go to the modifiers and add, let's say, a 3D transform. And there you go. You can already see the transformation happening. And using the states, I can change the animation quite easily by asking, is the animation showing? Question mark. If so, then set the angle to 90. If not, then I'm gonna set it back to 0, so without transformation. So like this, I can just start seeing the change. So when I tab, you can see that there's the rotation that I just added. All of these styles are super easy to change and super easy to customize. So for example, I can command click and inspect, and I can change directly from here the size of my text. And the great thing is that it creates code for you. So most of the time, you don't have to code anything from scratch, and it gives you feedback when there's an error, when something is wrong, so you can see the result in real time. A lot of these colors can simply be set in the assets catalog, and therefore you can set it up for dark mode. So for example, I have a bunch of background and then I have a dark background which I want to have a different color for light and dark mode. So let's say I want to change background 2, and in my code I'm using this one. I can directly change it here and it's going to be reflected in my UI. So I just changed the background 2 and it was using dark blue and now it's black. SwiftUI is really big on components. It wants to make sure that you're going to reuse all the views that you have created. So for example, we have this card bottom here that I'm using at 2 places, and I can command click to jump to that component and see what's going on. I can customize the data, and I can jump to another page by doing Command Shift O, course, view. This is where I use the card bottom right here with a few customization without even sending any props at all. So we can focus on the styling rather than writing a lot of code for functionalities, which can be done separately. If you look at this form right here, which saves the data automatically using states, it can be done with so little code, such as a toggle here, which provides all of these functionalities for you. The same for the picker. It is only about 4 lines of code, and people can just interact with it, and it's going to be reflected in the data. The same can be said about this list view here, which seemingly has a lot of stuff going on, but in fact, most of this code is just styling. So for example, I have this button here, I can just change right away, it's going to be reflected, and then I'm doing a simple loop, applying a bunch of styles for the text, and then I have these functionalities such as delete, move for free, so that the user can just swipe to delete, go to edit mode, do all of this stuff without me having to do a lot of work. Xcode provides thousands of icons for you to use for free. Using the SF Symbols app that you can download, for example, I can use this briefcase fill. I can just go to my code and set that name. And it's going to change directly in my design. The preview for SwiftUI is super powerful. So for example, if you're designing for dark mode at the same time, you can preview using multiple devices and different devices. So for example, this one is using the iPhone 8, but also the text size to be extra large. So I can change that to extra small, and it's going to change right away. If you need to preview components, you might not need all of this space, and maybe you need to preview multiple components. So you can just use preview layout. It is important to understand that what you learn here is going to apply for iPad, for Apple Watch, for Apple TV, for the Mac as well, because you can use SwiftUI for all of those devices. In terms of layout, because we're using stacks, it's fully adaptive to a bigger screen like this one. And for example, for modals, you can see that SwiftUI takes care of all the adaptiveness for you. The philosophy for SwiftUI is not necessarily one code base for all devices, because each of them have different contexts. It is more to say you can use the same controls, the same techniques, the same stacks, and it's going to work everywhere. So you can learn once and apply anywhere. It's not you can code once and apply everywhere, because if you do so, then you're going to have a lot of conditions, a lot of problems, and a lot of things that don't work quite well across all devices. So in this course, we're going to focus on iOS, we're going to focus on the iPhone and the iPad, but all the things that you're going to learn are going to be usable for the other platforms as well. This course was made for people who are really passionate about UI, interactions, and animations. If you're a developer, you're really going to enjoy creating beautiful UIs, transitions, interactions, and also all the concepts behind UI design. I will share all the source files, the design files, and all the techniques that I have learned over the years. If you're a designer, you're gonna love the drag and drop interface. So for example, just drag and drop an image like this. You can change the styling quite easily, even the colors, and set the style guide, and play with the code because it's all generated for you. And by doing so, you're not only going to learn how to create your own app, but you're going to learn how to collaborate better with engineers so that everything that you create in prototype can be applied directly to the real app. How awesome would that be? There's simply no better way to learn code. So for example, I can go here, command click, inspect, and then change the color to one of the style guide. So for example, maybe accent, and it's going to change right away. Now, the colors can be customized in the assets catalog, so no longer you're gonna have to ask your developers to make all of these small changes for you. You can also customize these animations yourself. If you want a bigger animation, the timing of your animation, you want to make it slower, and you can see the product of your experimentations in real time as the app is being produced. If you're a beginner or you come from the web, it's gonna be super easy to pick up. You just need a little bit of HTML and CSS experience so that you know some basic concept of what it's like to write some code. I'm going to make sure that every step is super visual and that you're gonna get the feedback that you need in order to improve over time. And again, all the code for every single technique will be shared on the website, but also as part of the source files, so that you can compare your progress against mine. And make no mistake, this is a real app. We're making something that will be launched to the App Store using real techniques that can be used in production. To follow this course, you're going to need the latest OS for Mac, which is called Catalina. It's currently in beta, so along with Xcode 11, you can expect a few bugs along the way. But I will make sure to keep this up to date with notes and a lot of explanations as to what is happening. In order to download the betas, you're gonna need a developer account, and it's actually free if you don't have to publish it to the App Store. With the account, you're gonna be able to go to Develop and Downloads, and this is where you can install the latest beta for macOS as well as Xcode 11. In order to use the icons, you're going to need to go to Design and download SF symbols. The design file that is provided can be opened using Sketch, so you have to download the tool and also have SF symbols so that these icons can be viewed but also modified, so I can just copy and paste directly like this. Last but not least, you're gonna need to download all the assets. So I prepared a package where you can see all the source files, the design files, but also the assets that we'll use to create the app together. Awesome, I hope you're excited to create an app with me. So let's go ahead and create a new Xcode project, which is a second option. And here, I'm going to select single view app, click next. For the product name, let's put DesignCode. And for the organization, you can put either your name or your company name. For the identifier, it needs to be unique. So you can just put your domain name in reverse. So for example, if it's twitter.com, it would be com.twitter. The language is going to be Swift, and make sure to select Use SwiftUI and then click Next. You can save it anywhere you want, such as your downloads folder, so we can just create it right there. The first screen you're gonna see is the SwiftUI interface. I'm just gonna maximize this and then click Resume, and this will load the UI from the small code that I have right here, which is just Hello World. It is really important that you get to this screen. And if you run into errors, you make sure that you go to Preferences and then Accounts, and then you log in to your developer account. In the text section of this course, I put a bunch of troubleshoots where you might encounter these problems, and if you do, then hopefully these will help you. For the assets, we're gonna go to the assets catalog, and this is where we're gonna set the images, the illustrations, and the app icon. So I can just drag and drop these PDF files right here. And then for the app icon, I can just go here, go to the app icon folder, and just drag and drop all the icons at once. When you do that, you might run into a few warnings because it's not perfect. So for example, you're gonna need the icon.png for this one, for the 1024. And for the iPad Pro, we're gonna need this one, the 83 one, set at 83.5. The last fix is the 76 at 2x, so 76 for the iPad. And typically you're gonna see these warnings right here on the top right, and it's gonna tell you if you have any issue. So in this case, we have 3 unassigned. We can just delete this part and we should be good without warnings. The next thing we can do is to set the colors. So I can just right click anywhere, and here I can set a new color set. And for example, I'm going to name this one Primary. And Primary, I can select here. I can go to the attribute inspector, which is the option right here, and I can set the color from this menu. For most of us designers, we use the hex value, so we can just copy and paste the hex value from Sketch and put it right here. And secondly, we can set the appearances for light and dark modes. So any and dark So this is for default, and this is for dark mode, for the devices that support it. And selecting this, you can set the hex value as well to maybe something darker. Once you have a bunch of colors, so for example, I can create a new one, I can just group them by doing a new folder called colors. And I can just drag that to that folder. But obviously we don't want to do that one by one, so we can go to the assets, and I prepared this folder called assets.xc assets, and you can just drag and drop the colors folder like this. So with those colors, I can just delete these ones, and it's important that the names are consistent. So for example, accent, the name is going to be called in code. All right, so let me rename this, and we should be good to go. Let's go back to content view. So content view is the first screen that people will land on when they open your app. And if you make a change right here, it's going to be reflected in the preview. So let's change this to UI design. As you can see, as you type, it shows right away. And I can change the look of my text by command clicking and then click on inspect. And I can change the font. So for example, if I want a bigger font like title, and voila, it creates the code for me. I didn't have to code anything. I can change, let's say, to a bolder font, and it's gonna add a new modifier. I can even change the color. So command click right here, inspect, and then set the color, and voila, you can see the colors from your style guide. So for example, I can use the accent color. There you go. We're gonna need some more space, so you can go to the top right corner, and this is where I'm going to disable the inspector and also the navigation. So now I have a lot more space to work with. If you want to add a new UI element, you can click on the plus button on the top right, or Command Shift and L to summon this menu right here. And you can search for the UI element. So for example, we're gonna add a new text. And from here, I can just drag and drop this text where I want in my UI. So I just put it right underneath, and automatically it creates the stack for me. So on the second text, I can just go to inspect and change it from here if I want to. So I can change it to certificate, enter, and then boom, there you go. Let's add an image. So now we can do Command Shift L, which is faster, and I can go to the images tab, and here I'm going to drag and drop this image right here. There you go. So now we have two texts, one image. We would like to have a background, so we can try to click inspect, but here we don't see the background property. So what we can do is we can summon a background modifier. So we can do Shift, Command, and L. Go to the second tab called modifiers, search for background, and here we can just drag and drop to this view right here, like that. It's going to create the color blue, but we can change to black, or one of the colors that we have in our style guide. The drag and drop doesn't always work, so make sure that you know what you're applying to. For example, I'm going to select a card, and as designers we love rounded corners, so I'm gonna summon that corner radius, and I can put it right here. So here I just need to change the number, so let's say maybe to 10, and voila. So the code is not always well formatted, so what you can do is put each of these modifiers in its own line so it's cleaner, but also you can select the code to indent it for you. So it's Control-I, and it's going to do a lot of the indentation for you so that it's easier to read. Alright, so let's look at our code. We have the main title, which is right here. You can see the selection as I click here, and we have this one which is black, so I want to make this white. And of course I can do it from the UI, but it's not always optimal, right? So we're gonna do the color modifier, search for it, text color, and set this to white instead. The next thing that's really important for design is to have proper negative spacing. And luckily for us, Apple makes it super easy to have some really good default values, but you still have to set it. So we want to set the padding on the text and not on the entire card, because doing it on the card would give some extra padding against the image. So I'm going to select this text and inspect, and then add the padding from the top, and then it applies that padding for me. So as you can see, with very little code and very few steps, we have something that looks good, that have a bunch of elements and modifiers so that we can style it to any level of complexity that we want. In the next section, I'm going to teach you how to recreate this design, how to create more complex layouts so that we can adapt it to any device. Then further down the road, we're going to learn about animations, gestures, how to create a navigation, a menu, and work with data. So I hope you're excited to create a really unique app with animations and gestures using techniques that can accommodate any kind of layout that you can dream of and have fun in the process. I'll see you in the next section. Thank you so much.